Well, we get into sort of a later part of the story. And, then it ties into the whole Orlando Anderson situation.
Okay.
So originally, we talked about a situation where Suge's friend gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that, even though he was never convicted, multiple people have said that they think that Wolf did it, who was one of Puffy's, main guys.
Mm-hmm.
Who's recently, who got killed some years back.
Jake gets killed in Atlanta.
Right.
That's really the first blood on the ground.
Right, and that was Suge's close friend.
Correct. Yeah.
So Jake gets killed, and I guess Suge kind of blames Puffy for it in some regard.
Yeah, because the guy who kills Jake is from Puffy's camp, and so he holds him responsible for it.
So who killed Jake?
The consensus is it's an unsolved case, but the consensus is, and by Georgia PD, Atlanta PD, a guy named Wolf, Anthony Jones.
Wolf.
That was kind of a, he was to Puffy Combs what Buntry was to Suge.
Which kind of led into the story of, people saying that Puffy had put a $10,000 bounty on Death Row Chains. There was bounties on Death Row Chains.
Yeah.
10,000, I think?
$10,000.
Right. Your mom had a Death Row chain.
She had a little bitty one.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they were snatching those. Yeah, they were snatching those.
Okay.
And the fight in the mall between Trayvon Lane and Orlando, people were saying was over that $10,000 bounty.
Yeah.
Did you know anything about this at all?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Mm-mm. I'd have probably, been looking for a Death Row chain. I mean, if I'd have heard of it, I'd have probably been trying to get that 10,000. Me and all my homies, I'm sure. So I ain't never heard this before.
Did Orlando ever talk to you about that situation in the mall with Trayvon?
No.
Okay.
Stuff like that happens so often. I mean, it wouldn't be nothing to talk about like it would be a big deal, Like in the 90s, it was always, if you go to the mall, there's no telling what might happen in those days. So, yeah.
Okay. You've had situations in that mall?
All the time, man. Like, we didn't have fights in malls, shootouts, gang fights, melees, name it.
You've had actual shootouts in the mall?
Yes.
So that's just a death mall, basically.
I mean, not that particular mall, but it's just, in the 90s, gangbanging was at a such high, it was like so heightened at that point to where, like people would represent their neighborhoods with their sweatshirts and stuff like that. We would have our gangs, going across our shirts and the colors, you know what I mean? So, and we would usually go to the mall in packs, you know what I'm saying? At least in a small group. And, if you run into your enemy there, it's like, come on, what do you think is going to happen?
So it was just on site?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So you would walk around everywhere with a gun on you, no matter where?
You would have to, yeah. I mean, yeah, it would be smart to do. Like we have a saying in L.A., we would say, better to be caught with it than without it. You know what I mean?
Were there certain places where you would not carry a gun?
Nah, at that point in the 90s, there was like for me and for certain people that I knew, it was not an option not to. You know what I mean? It was like, what was the commercial, never leave home without it? It was like one of them situations, yeah.
So you would go to the grocery store?
Everywhere, church. My mother would pull up on me in my hood to take me to church, and I got it on me. And I'm not going to say, Mom, I got a gun, because I couldn't tell her back then. So I would just have to be in the church with a gun through the whole service, just looking stupid. Feeling guilty, too, at the same time.
All right. I mean, but you hear some real crazy situations where, like, shootouts happen at, like, funerals and wakes and stuff like that.
Yeah, man, I know a situation where a guy, he was from a rival neighborhood of somebody that I think he got along with, and it was just a bad situation how the person passed. He was at the funeral and got killed by some of the people you know, that was on the side of the deceased, you know? And he died at the funeral in a conflict that arose, you know, just the emotional part of it, people getting in their feelings, and the story, you know, it's like the guy is dead, and, you know, people want some type of resolve or get back. And, you know, it kind of got out of control, and he got killed at the funeral. And this was last year.
So the guy that got killed, was he the guy that killed the person at the
No,
funeral?
it was probably some of his homies or something, or somebody he knew or he was close to. It was something like that. So he was trying to come and show that, you know, it was personal or whatever. But, you know, at that time, it's just not smart, you know, to even go around. You know what I mean? If you didn't have nothing to do with it, it's probably not smart to even go around until all that stuff dies down. But he died at the funeral, yeah.
Wow. So he shows up at a funeral to try to pacify things, ends up dying in the process. So even funerals are not safe.
Nah. Because that stuff is so ingrained in people. You know, it's like, even me, like I remove myself from being around, you know, that element, you know, the thinking, you know, the energy, you know, being in the hood, in the city, all this stuff. Because when you're around it, it's going to bleed into you. You know what I mean? And you just have to stay away, man, especially if you're trying to evolve from that. It's best to stay away.